Kia ora. It has just occurred to me that it is Thursday, and I have not given you guys processed answers for your quiz that I gave you, so I'll do that now. Unfortunately, I am in isolation, and I don't have a printer at home, so I haven't been able to print these questions to be able to annotate on them. That's usually what I do. So you're just going to have to settle with just a video for this week. All right, cool. So CPR quiz number 2 was just looking at that multiple alleles and mutation. It's basically giving you some more practice on that new material with those new alleles that we've seen, and also understanding how mutation affects mitosis and meiosis. Cool. So here's the 2021 exam. I'll just zoom in so you guys can see it better. Cool. So in this case here, they are talking about an animal that we find in Australia. It's a bush-tailed possum, and oh my goodness, how cute they are. They kind of look like mini deers. So anyway, there are 3 different colors that are possible. There's golden, which produces the golden fur possum, and they've realized that there's 3 different alleles for those fur colors. The golden is recessive, is what they've realized, to both the black and the gray colors. And then they've given you a dominance order. So they've given you FB, FG, and F small g. Cool. So first off, this is showing an example of multiple alleles because we now have more than 2. The other thing that they have shown us is dominant and recessive. So even though there are multiple alleles there, this does still fit back into the dominant recessive traits that we were talking about. So that makes it a little bit easier for that. And they say the black allele is dominant over the gray allele. So black allele will also be dominant over the golden allele. If the black allele is absent, then the gray allele will be dominant over the golden allele, and then the golden allele is only present if you have only golden alleles. So I hope that makes sense with the dominance order. So this question isn't an incomplete or codominance question. It is just complete dominance. So one is dominant over the other, and if the other one is not there, then the next one gets expressed. So I hope that makes kind of sense to you. All right, they want you to describe why there's only one combination of parental genotypes that could produce all 3 phenotypes. So how do we get something that's black, gray, and golden fur? And then they want you to support your answer with a Punnett square. So I will actually grab a piece of paper and show you how this works. And show you on the document camera. I also don't have my normal pens. So I'm going to use my glitter pens right now. But it's just a little bit more fun. All right. So I think it's helpful to kind of have a list of all the possible genotypes and what color would result from that. So that way we can kind of just understand the genetics of this, because it is multiple alleles. So we have FB. Actually, let me go the other way around. Let me write down all the genotypes that will result in that color. So if I had a black colored possum, I'm just trying to get my document camera to focus. There we go. Here are the list of possibilities that I could have. I could have FB, I could have capital B, capital B. Oh, geez, come on, things. There we go. So FB is greater than F capital G, which is greater than F little g. And this one's black, gray, and gold. I'm just kind of putting that down as a reference point. All right. So I could have black colored if I have 2 of the black alleles. I can also have black colored if I have 1 black allele and 1 gray allele. And I can also have the black color if I have the gold allele. So those are my options for black. Options for gray is that I have 2 capital G's, or I have a capital G and I have a lowercase g. That one will also result in gray because remember that this one's dominant to that one. I can't have any of these gray ones with the black alleles because if I had that, then I have black as my color. All right, last one is gold, and the only way I can have gold is if I have 2 of those recessive alleles. Hopefully you're good so far with that. All right, so I need to have offspring that have all 3 of those traits. It doesn't matter what genotype it is, it just needs to have the phenotype that results in the 3. So think back to when we talked about having heterozygous crossed together. When we have heterozygous crossed together, that allows us to have the 2 genotypes. In this case, I'm trying to create 3 genotypes. So I want both parents to be heterozygous, but I want one parent to be heterozygous black and the other one to be heterozygous gray. The reason why is because we are trying to, like I said, create a Punnett square that has all 3 of those traits. So once again, like I said, we're using those heterozygous. Whenever I see something that says like you have offspring that have multiple phenotypes, heterozygous is the way to go because we need to be able to have that combination or that potential to get the combination of recessive. So if I have a parent that's heterozygous and they both have the recessive genotype, that means it's then possible, oopsie, I keep doing that wrong, to get the genotype that is the hidden recessive one. So that's why I know I have to have heterozygous to that. And then that one's going to be my gold colored one. Then I need to do the other 2. So if this was a normal, just 2 alleles, all these would be the dominant trait. But I want this weird multiple alleles. So I have a heterozygous black and I have a heterozygous gray. And the reason why I need heterozygous of each one of those is so that way I get all 4 genotypes. Sorry, all 3 genotypes. So if this one's got the black and the gray one, the black is dominant over the gray, so that one's black. This one has the gray and the gold. Gray is dominant over gold, so that gives me a gray offspring. And then this one is black and recessive gold, so that one's black as well. And what we notice is that I have 50% black, 25% gray, 25% gold. And so that's giving me all 3 of the phenotypes from that cross. If I did a heterozygous black and black, I would only get the option of black or gold. Same thing if I did a gray and gray heterozygous cross, I would just get the option of gray or gold. And if I did one that was a black gray heterozygous with another black gray heterozygous, I'd only get black and gray as the options. So this is the only way you will get all 3. I hope that makes all sense. If you're not sure that didn't make sense, go through and draw the other Punnett squares with the other heterozygous combination of that big B and little big G, and you'll see what I mean. Cool. All right, genotype and phenotype ratio. Explain why this combination is the only one to produce all 3. That's all your kind of justification components. Let me pull up the marking schedule. Now, unfortunately, I think my hyperlinks aren't working. So we're just going to search level 2 biology exams. And this one was the 2021. So it was last year's exam. Here we go, genetic variation, 2021 examination paper. I don't want the examination papers. I'm going to change this top thing to reports and schedules. Let's go wait for you to see how to get your answer keys. All right, cool, genetic variation and change, 2021. All right, And we are looking at question 3, I believe. Yeah, here we go. I really hate the way biology marks sometimes because it's a real messy thing. Just look at that. They just give you a whole big paragraph and they give you a whole list of bullet points. They don't clearly cut like chemistry does, but it is what it is. All right, cool. So just kind of pointing out where the points were in this question. I was quite surprised that the excellence points were only in part C and that part B didn't have any of them. But that just gives you an idea of what they're looking for in the justification component. Cool. I don't think there's really anything I need to kind of add to that. So we'll move on to part C. So part C, we're looking at skin cancer, which happens when you have been exposed to too much light. And that's because of mutations to the areas that have been exposed. So nose and ears are very commonly forgotten when it comes to the sunscreen. Compare and contrast mutations in skin cells versus the golden fur mutation that we talked about, which is that beginning question and how it could affect the possum gene pool. So with that golden fur mutation, the thing you have to remember is that it is inheritable in the offspring. So what that tells me is that that's a gametic mutation, because gametic mutations are the only ones that can be passed down to offspring. When we are talking about skin cancer, that is an example of a mutation in a body cell. So body cells, remember, we refer to as somatic mutations. Somatic mutations just affect that individual. It is a mutation in your body cells, not in your sex cells. So since it's not a mutation in your sex cells, the offspring won't get it. So that's kind of the main idea behind that question. I wanted to ask you this question because I think it's a really good summary and reminder of the difference between mitosis and meiosis, which is what you covered last week. I don't see this question very often on assessments, so it's good for me to point it out to you because I find with biology, they have a huge scope of what they can ask. And so I just want to show you a question they don't commonly ask in case it comes back again. So yeah, let's look at the marking schedule here. So in this case, they're looking for definitions. When in doubt, just stick it in definition because that's usually where the achieved points are. So they're describing mutation, describing somatic occurs in body cells or not inherited. Gametic happens in sex cells or is inherited. Like that's real basic definitions and descriptions. For this one here, the other thing was explaining the location of those mutations. So understanding one's happening in the sex cells and others are not. And understanding that gametic is something that's inherited, whereas somatic isn't. So gametic mutations are what can be added to the gene pool. We haven't talked about gene pools yet. That's in our last kind of section, but basically it's all the genes and alleles that are available in a population. Make sure you are tying it back to the question. You can see within the context of golden fur, and I've commented on some of the quizzes to state that you haven't tied it back to the question, you haven't tied it back to the parents. You want to be specific for the excellence level, because if you just give me the regurgitated, memorized explanations on mutations, you will only get so far. You need to actually go back to the question and relate it. So in this case of the golden fur, some parent needed to have a mutation in their gametic cells, and the offspring that were born to that were golden, but the parent themselves wasn't golden because it's a new mutation. A good example of that would be like the werewolf cat, where werewolf. Why can't I spell werewolf? There we go. Werewolf. The werewolf cat is a good example of a new mutation. I'll just click on the Wikipedia page. So this is a newly discovered domesticated cat. See? Mutation that has occurred over the last 20 years. So basically what happened is this cat gave birth to these kittens that looked like little werewolves, and then they kept breeding that because they're like, oh, that's pretty cool. It looks like a werewolf. So yeah, I just thought it was kind of neat to show you that's like a recent mutation. So the parents would have looked perfectly normal, and then the offspring are the ones that look funny. And then they just kept breeding those offspring. So the moment that that mutation happens in the gametic cells, that is now part of the organism. So now the organism's somatic cells will have that mutation. The organism's gametic cells also carry that mutation. So that mutation will be something that's passed on. Whereas if there was a mutation in a cat that resulted in some like cancer, that cancer isn't inherited in the offspring. There are some cancers that are inheritable, but those ones are like in the DNA of the organism that's then passed down, like as a family trait. But if you get mutations later in life in a body cell, that's not going to be passed on. So sometimes cancers can run in families, sometimes they won't, but this is our little werewolf cat. I don't think I'd want one of these. I don't think they're terribly cute. So yeah, I hope that kind of helps you get some ideas on the material, and it was a good kind of recap of what we've covered so far. Let me know if you have any questions.